One day, out of the blue, you're asked to create a tally counter. You say, what is it? And you're told a tally counter contains two buttons. When one button is clicked, the number will increase by 1. When the other button is clicked, the number will go down by 1. This is not the complete specification, but let's start. Okay, you say, I need two buttons. There's one button. There's another button. And where's the number going to go? Well, the information you were given didn't specify that, but you need to hold a number somewhere. Let's take the cheap way out and use a label. And I'll stick the label between the buttons. You can format these things. What I'm going to do is start on one button, and then you can do the rest by yourself. So the first button I'll do is an add button. The next button will be a subtract button, and this is where my information is going to be. All right. I like to give the buttons names. So I'm going to rename this. So I start off with BTN because it's a button, and I'm going to call this add. I'm going to put some text on it, and I'm going to make the text size fairly big. Let's say 36. And I'm going to make the width across the entire screen by filling the parent. And the height I'm going to make, let's say about 60 pixels. All right, good. I'm going to do the same thing for button 2. So you can see that I've renamed the label, renamed this button, made the font bold, and on the label I've set the text to be equal to 0. So I think when I click the add button, this should increase, and when I click the subtract button, this should decrease. At least that's the way I think I'm going to do this. But there's nothing here which tells me how to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, at least to have that action occur, so I'm going to have to go to blocks. And there's nothing here. Well, what I'm going to do is say, well, when I click on the add button, so I click on the button add, and I can see there's this. It says button add. When it's clicked, do everything that's in here, and there's nothing there. What I really want to do is I want to do something with the count. So if I take a look at count, what I really want to do is change the value of the text. What do I want to change it to? Well, I want to take the original value that was there, which is 0, and add 1 to it. I point out that we get an error and a warning down here because we have an unfilled socket. So this looks like I'm going to add something. It's probably math. Look in math, and sure enough, look at that. So I'm going to add two things together. I still have a problem because I don't have any entries here. And if I look at math, I have, well, I don't want a 0, but what here? I can add 1 to something. I type that in. And what should go here would be actually the original value of whatever is in count. And it turns out that what I want is this. This tells me take the text that's on count and add 1 to it. I'm going to look like I'm going to make a mistake. And I said, no, 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 I don't want that. I want the text. That's what I want. So when I click the add button, that's what it says. Take the value that you have on count, add 1 to it, and put that value back into count. I got to tell you that a programmer looking at this would really get bent out of shape because they would use something called a variable, but we're going to skip that for the time being. So we've designed it, we've created something, and now we have to test it out. It just so happens I have a emulator up and running, and here it is, and I'm going to click add. 1, 2. Oh, this is great. And subtract doesn't work. The reason subtract doesn't work is I don't have any code for it. Okay. Well, I think I want to do the same thing for subtract as I did for add, except instead of adding 1, I want to subtract 1. Right, that's easy enough. Watch this. I duplicate this. I don't really want to duplicate it. I'm getting an error because I have two of the same name, but I can choose this, and I know I want to use this and this, but I need a subtraction. So I look in math, and oh, there you go. That's pretty convenient. Oh, that's neat. Delete this. And so now, when I click the button that's called the subtract button, I should take whatever's in count and subtract 1 from it. Let's see if that works. Subtract. Oh man, that's great. I can do this all day. But it turns out, I said, well, look, this is really neat. Watch. 0 minus y? Was that? Oh, I must have clicked twice. Minus 2, minus 3. This is really great. So I showed the person, and I said, hey, look, I click add, it adds. I click subtract, I subtract. And the guy says, no, this is not right. You said, no, it works according to your specifications. Because the specifications said when one button is clicked, increase. When the other button is clicked, the number will go down. But that's not what the person meant. What the person meant was, as soon as it gets to 0, you have to subtract, because this is meant for keeping track of people going into a nightclub or something like that, and you're not going to have negative people in the nightclub. Now you tell me. Okay, so we have to modify this code. What does that mean? That means that we want this click to work as long as the count doesn't go negative. How are we going to do that? It turns out that in controls there's something which looks very good. If. There are other things, if then else, but let's go for if. So if this, whatever this is true, then we'll subtract. Otherwise, we won't do anything. Okay. Well, what do we want? Now, what we want here depends on how you think. This is true. Do you want to stop when the count is 0? Do you want to do this while the count is greater than 0? So, for example, you can use this block, and we know we're testing this. So when this count gets to be something, we will, as long as this value is true, we will do this. So we can say, while it is greater than, I think just typing 0 should work. While it's greater than 0, do this. Or we can say greater than or equal to 1. We could do it that way. Both will work. It depends on how you think about the problem. So let's see if this works. We go to the emulator and we add some numbers. All right, here we go. And now we subtract. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is great. 0, it doesn't work anymore. That is to say, the program works, but it does not allow us to subtract when we've reached 0. Pretty neat. Now, there are other things you can do with this. I'm just going to show you one, because once you get an application working, you can do lots of stuff with it. By that I mean, if you try to go below 0, what would happen? Well, click over here, and say else. And you'll see, I'll click over here to close this. If this is not true, then we'll do this. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the color of something on the label. So, label, color, background color, 2, and I'll just make that red. Okay, looks good. So, let's go to the emulator, and I'm adding, and I go to subtract. Everything looks good until I try to subtract when the number is no longer greater than or equal to 0. That means this will fail, and I will do this instead. Oh, great. Now, those of you who've programmed will know I set myself up for a problem, because when I press the add button, the background color doesn't change. Why? Because there's nothing that says change it back. If I had to fix this, what I would do, very simply, is make that white, so that when the emulator runs and I add something, it changes it to white. Add, subtract, bingo. Now, in real life, you would probably make a sound, or if you had a real phone, you would make it vibrate, so whoever's using the tally counter would recognize that something had to be checked. And that's it for this part.